And welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about lupus and what it was. I realized when I started this channel I wanted it to be something that brought awareness to certain situations, and lupus is a huge part of my life. I was diagnosed about 4 years ago, and so it's finally time for me to just tell everybody out there exactly what it is. Because I know when I first heard lupus, I had no idea what it was at all. And if you start to Google some things, it can get a little bit scary just because it's something new and it's something, it's something scary to read about online. And so I want to come on here and just tell you guys my story and give you a little background on lupus and everything. So basically what lupus is a connective tissue disease, and what that means is that it's an autoimmune disease. And an autoimmune disease is when your immune system is all out of whack and it doesn't target what it's supposed to target. And what that is so if I am normally sick and all these pathogens and everything are going into my system, your immune system would usually kick off and start fighting those off to help protect your body. But with lupus patients, your immune system gets very confused and it starts attacking things that it's not supposed to attack. And that's why it's called connective tissue, because it goes after the tissues in your body. And depending on what lupus you do have, there are a few different kinds, your different parts of your body are being attacked. And for mine specifically, I have systemic lupus, and that attacks all and everything, almost every single major organ that I have, including heart, lungs, kidneys, brain, skin, joints. So it essentially attacks all those whenever it feels like there's an inflammation going on. So if you have discoid lupus, that means that your immune system is targeting your skin. And as a part of systemic lupus, this can be the case as well. For me, I know I had a lot of skin issues, and that helped diagnose my illness. And for example, I'll roll this up. Right here you can see, let me see, I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but this is a huge patch of what lupus can bring. And before I got diagnosed, I was getting these on my legs, on my stomach, and the biggest part of my body was on my back. And this is what triggered a rheumatologist to say, okay, this is lupus, and this is systemic lupus based on, lab results and everything. And so there's systemic lupus, which targets all of the organs in the body. There is discoid lupus that targets all of the skin. And then there is the lupus that just targets the kidneys. And if you guys are familiar with Nick Cannon, he is diagnosed with lupus that targets his kidneys. And if you guys have any interest in following up on more of that type of lupus, then I'd highly recommend following Nick Cannon's story, because it's very inspirational and it is helpful for those that are going through the same situation. I have very brittle nails. It's hard for me to grow out my nails. I have purple nails, so when the temperatures change, if it gets cold outside, I begin to get purple around my fingernails. My hair begins to fall out and I will get patches, almost like the one I showed you on my arm, but on my scalp. And if my hair continues to fall out in those places, it will scar, and ultimately hair will not grow back there anymore. I get inflammation in my chest and in my lungs, which leads to shortness of breath and sharp pains when I take a deep breath. So if I'm just sitting there doing nothing, then it's very hard to breathe. I get really tired to the point where my body is super weak and I can't even lift up a toothbrush or my purse. And I'm one of the lucky few that does not get any joint pain. So that is something that I'm thankful for out of this situation, is that I don't get any joint pain. But I do get inflammation in my ribs, in between my ribs. So I'll get pain in between my ribs there. And that's pretty much the gist of it. Otherwise, systemic lupus is a pretty hidden disease, because you don't know what's taking a toll when your body is going through a flare. And what a flare means is that your autoimmune disease is highly active, because lupus is not continuous. There are points that your body go through recovery, and so you can go maybe 3 months for recovery, and then all of a sudden you just are overwhelmed with all of your personal symptoms, and that's how you know when you have a flare. And so when I have a flare, I'm very aware of it, because I just have zero energy and I start having all the normal symptoms that I do. And so when you do have a flare, you want to make sure that you are getting plenty of rest. It's usually my sign to just step back, take a step back from my crazy busy life and calm down, focus on me, focus on my body, because again, with systemic lupus, you have no idea which part of your body exactly is targeted. So it is important to let your rheumatologist know that you believe that you're going through a flare-up, because they will send you off to the lab to get blood work done. And what this can tell you is, either your kidneys are functioning correctly or incorrectly, and they'll take a look at your heart or whatever part of your body that you feel has been most targeted. For me, it's always my heart. I get tachycardia and certain heart palpitations, and my kidneys as well. It's always crucial to look at your kidneys, because that's the number one organ that lupus targets, and it can drastically change your life if your kidneys are being targeted. And that is something you want to always monitor and be aware of. Even if you don't feel well for one day, call up your doctor and let them know, just so you can take the necessary precautions for this, because you don't want to end up in a situation where it's potentially too late. And that's the scary thing about lupus. People get diagnosed with lupus and they automatically want to know, what's the mortality rate for this disease? And honestly, every single case of lupus is different. And so it's very hard to determine what your potential future is going to be. And the best way that doctors go off of this is they check your status or your current level of lupus and how it is and how it's being managed. And you can have somebody that has their lupus completely under control with zero organ involvement, or you can have somebody with lupus that needs a kidney transplant. And so that is, you can't really explain what the mortality rate is, but with proper treatment and getting everything under control, that is ultimately the best way to make sure that you're in the best health possible and to live the longest, healthiest life that you possibly could be. And for me, when I was diagnosed with lupus, it was a little bit traumatic and traumatizing for me, only because I always grew up, you know, not wanting to take any medication. And so when they brought to me, hey, here's some Plaquenil, here's some hydroxychloroquine, you're supposed to take this daily. And my first thought was, absolutely not. I am not taking medication every single day. I'm not going to be dependent on a pill bottle. But I did my research, and I found out that if you take medication, this specific medication, which was also initially used to treat malaria, so it's a very powerful drug. If you take this, you can get weaned off. And I spoke with my family. They said that they would be very supportive of what my decision was, but I came across some research, and it basically scared me to the point where I felt like maybe I should try this out, and it doesn't have to be a forever remedy for me. And so I chose to take the medication because mortality rates did increase without any treatment. And so I have been on Plaquenil since, and after about 6 months, I felt like my body was completely different. I had more energy. I felt normal. I didn't feel sick at all. And I began to think, how did I function without this treatment at all? And so part of my treatment now, I am still currently on Plaquenil, but I've drastically changed the way that I eat. And that ultimately is going to be my number one treatment. So my goal is to wean myself off with the assistance of doctors, of course, to monitor my lab work, off of this medication and strictly go to an anti-inflammatory diet. And this, I mean, I'm going to tell you, it's not for everybody, just because of the certain levels of lupus you may be at. But I will say that it is something that everybody should do. So I'm saying if you are taking a high steroid and Plaquenil and other anti-inflammatory drugs, I think that you should also eat anti-inflammatory foods, throw out the processed foods and everything, and incorporate this into your lifestyle, because once I did, my life completely changed. I was able to head to the gym 6 days a week, work out, start running again. I was able to take on school full-time and work full-time, and I was able to do all these things. So again, this is something that you should do research on if you were recently diagnosed with lupus. And so I hope this video was a huge help. I am going to be doing another lupus video on how I manage my lupus and my lupus must-haves. So stay tuned and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will continue to film about my lupus journey because I've had numerous experiences, and I am happy to help and talk to anybody that's out there that's in the same situation. So thank you guys again for tuning in. I appreciate you, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.